My name is Mara Ellison, and I'm 36. By day, I build portfolios for people who confuse movement with progress. By night, I pack lunchboxes, check molars for wiggling, and remember the exact plushie each twin requires for sleep. Somewhere between close of market and bedtime stories, I learned the difference between stability and stillness. One is earned, one is imposed. Tuesday was ordinary in the way that makes hindsight cruel. I'd worked a 12-hour day, earnings calls, a bulky model, a client who wanted alpha without weather. At 7:30, I helped Ethan glue a paper volcano baking soda sealed like contraband, read Emma her favorite story in the exact voice I've used since she was 4, and did the mental math of tomorrow's carpool while moving 3 loads of laundry from heap to folded to drawers. When the apartment finally hummed low, I padded into the kitchen. Caleb stood at the sink rinsing a single plate like it had personally offended him. He was barefoot, handsome, the way handsome can be when a man knows angles in lighting. There was a time I would have put my chin on his shoulder and stolen a sip from his glass. That night I thought about whether we had enough foil for the twins' science display. "I was thinking," he said, voice neutral, "we should stop pretending." My hand loosened around the fridge handle. "Pretending what? That this is a marriage." He didn't turn around. "You're a great co-parent, Mara, but you're not my match." There are sentences that fold the air. This one flattened it. He kept washing that one plate, like pronouncing a death sentence was an errand he needed off his list. "So that's how you see me," I heard myself say, as if through a wall. He shrugged. "We both know it. I've evolved. You haven't. You're still you, reliable, practical. It's not a bad thing, it's just not my person." Reliable, practical. The words women are handed like participation trophies when passion is being redistributed elsewhere. "I want a partner who challenges me," he continued, now turning to lean against the counter. "Who gets the journey I'm on." The journey he's on changes quarterly. HR coordinator to branding contractor to wellness podcast host to men's purpose coach. Each pivot performed online with enough sincerity to win small audiences and large excuses. My salary paid the rent. My overtime paid his retreats. "I'm not saying we end things," he added, palms open like a TED Talk. "The kids need stability. We can co-parent effectively. I just think we should be honest about what this really is." He offered the word honest like a medal for my chest. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. There was a time I believed those responses proved love. They only prove you've accepted the stage. I nodded once, slowly. "I see," I said and walked past him. He said my name like a question. I kept walking. The hallway smelled faintly of the twins' shampoo, the kind with cartoon whales on the bottle. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the duvet's stitched pattern. I felt nothing, and then everything, and then a third thing, low and clean, a decision taking shape. That night, ceiling staring came easy. When had he stopped touching me like contact was a choice? When had his compliments migrated to an audience that clapped back? Maybe the answer didn't matter. The portfolio of our marriage carried too many distressed assets, and I'd been the only one making contributions. At 3:04 a.m., I accepted the cheapest truth in the world. You cannot meet the hunger of a person whose appetite is performance. He wanted me small and adoring until he could afford to replace me with applause. He wanted me to stay a wife while he auditioned for a myth. I set an alarm for 5. At 5 o'clock, I made scrambled eggs, cut fruit into stars because it matters to 7-year-olds, packed lunches with notes. You are clever. You are kind. You are loved. I braided Emma's hair while she told me about a playground mystery. I tied Ethan's shoes while he told me about the secret folds of space. I loaded backpacks with the inventory of a school day. Folders, water bottles, hope. Caleb drifted in late, mused about his inbox, kissed the top of Emma's head, forgot Ethan's. When he asked if I wanted to talk about last night's clarity, his tone made it sound like we'd agreed to turn the guest room into a meditation studio. We're on the same page, I said, wrapping a sandwich. You were very clear. His eyebrows tilted. He'd expected the gendered choreography, tears, bargaining, promises to match his newest vibration, not silence, not acceptance. After drop-off, I sat at my office desk and opened a blank document titled Exit Strategy. Then I did what I do best. I broke the mess into steps. Consult attorney, custody, assets, documentation. Document caregiving, pickups, homework, doctor visits, school emails addressed to me. Pull deed and mortgage, confirm names, obligations. Freeze credit, turn on alerts. Health plan, gym at lunch, food that's not coffee, a haircut not from panic. Backups, paper and digital, screenshots, voicemails, texts. At lunch, I called a law office whose reviews said practical, not performative. The associate listened without exclaiming. "Start documenting," she said. "Every appointment, every school event, keep it factual, don't editorialize. If he truly wants to limit the relationship to co-parenting, hold him to the standard on paper." I almost laughed. Paper is my native language. That afternoon, I checked the deed and mortgage, half expecting an unpleasant surprise. The mortgage was in my name only, his credit too tangled to qualify when we bought. We'd planned to add him when things improve. Things did not improve. I printed copies, slid them into a red folder labeled House. By early evening, I'd answered 12 emails, closed a position, and reached the sort of calm that feels like glass. Beautiful, breakable, clear. Caleb texted a meme about choosing joy. I stood in our tiny office surrounded by bins of the twins' artwork and felt something that wasn't joy, but might have been kin to it. The discovery of a door that had always been unlocked. When he came home, he hovered. "You're quiet." "Lots on my mind," I said evenly. "Work. Do you want to talk about what I said?" "We did," I said. "You said it. I heard you." His smile faltered. He wore confusion like a cologne he couldn't pronounce. After dinner, I read with the kids. When Caleb launched a story about his latest brand collab, the twins' eyes slid toward me. "Are we staying up late?" "No, we are not." Teeth, pajamas, books, loves, lights. Once they slept, he found me at the sink drying. "Mara, I didn't mean you're nothing." I folded a towel with church precision. "You said I'm a co-parent. We have twins. That tracks." He searched my face for a flare, a crack, something to wedge a wedge into. Finding none, he tried kindness. "You've been different." "I'm meeting the terms you set," I said, efficiently. Sometime past 10, the apartment settled. The hum of the refrigerator, the sigh of a building breathing, the small clicks that tell you your life is held together by machines and willpower. In the tiny office, I slid files into labeled folders and dates into a color-coded calendar, and the last of my denial into the bin under the desk. The one lined with a grocery bag because the can's too small. My phone lit up. Sierra Vale posted an Instagram story, a black square with white text, "Liberated men don't confuse routine with love." I didn't need to check who'd viewed it. Caleb was always the first blue dot. I screenshotted it, filed it under context, and turned my phone face down. I had a life to run. Before bed, I stood in the twins' doorway and watched their breathing synchronize. Grief moved through me quietly, the way fog erases shapes before it clears. I pressed my palm to the doorframe like it could take an oath. Here's what I decided. If I am only a co-parent to him, I will be the best one my kids have ever seen. And if he mistakes my silence for surrender, that's his literacy problem, not mine. In the morning, I would lift weights on my lunch break and not apologize for the hour. I would eat food that didn't come in a paper cup. I would reply to school emails before anyone else could pretend to. I would not explain my boundaries because explanations are invitations to negotiate. I turned off the hall light and returned to a bed that felt like a waiting room. In the dark, the sentence he'd given me rearranged itself into a plan I gave myself. Co-parent. Fine, but I am also Mara Ellison, and I don't need permission to be whole. By Wednesday, the apartment sounded different to me. Not quieter, truer. The dishwasher wasn't a chore. It was proof the day had been lived. The twins' backpacks thudded like small declarations. We came. We needed. We were met. I started where I always do. Systems. The first system was my body. I'd been feeding it coffee and adrenaline like those were the food groups. At lunch, I walked to a gym 2 blocks from the office and let a trainer named D remind me what muscles were for besides clenching. 45 minutes later, I was sweaty, shaky, and oddly hopeful. I scheduled 3 more sessions on the spot. The world doesn't fall apart when you leave your desk. It just waits. The second system was paper. I bought a hardbound planner because phones can vanish into kids' pillows and husbands' pockets. The planner had columns and dignity. On the first page I wrote, "Logistics are love in a house like this." Then I started logging. 7:10 a.m. Pack lunches, note cards, il stargazer, il storyteller. 8:05 a.m. drop-off spoke to Ms. Alvarez re-volcano display timeline. 2:40 p.m. Nurse call Emma's cough. Scheduled check tomorrow. 4:15 p.m. 3:05 p.m. Caleb text. Running late. Creative sync. 5:12 p.m. Ethan finished math homework. Fractions. 7:30 p.m. baths. 8:00 p.m. Read Dragons Don't Share Twice because sharing is aspirational. I did not add adjectives. I did not add feelings. I did not add why Caleb was late. Paper doesn't care about motive. Paper cares about sequence. When the kids slept, I built the digital version, a shared family calendar with recurring events, color-coded. I invited Caleb with view access and read receipts on. If he ignored it, the timestamps would not. Thursday afternoon, I took Emma to the pediatrician. The waiting room had a marine mural and a basket of battered board books whose corners had been disinfected to a soft shine. Jonas, the pediatric nurse with kind eyes and a smile that felt like a stable surface, took Emma's temperature and talked to her like she was the main character instead of a prop. He asked me the right questions without assuming I didn't know the answers. "Any changes at home?" he asked gently. I said a sentence that was both practical and a prayer. "We're adjusting routines." He nodded like that was a plan, not a confession. On the way out, he handed Emma a sticker and me a printout with care instructions. "If she spikes tonight, call," he said. "Otherwise, you've got this." Back home, I slid the visit summary into a folder labeled Health and forwarded the digital copy to Caleb. He reacted with a thumbs-up emoji, which is modern civilization's way of saying I was here without being here. The log got a new line. Petty visit 415, cough viral, care plan on file. Friday morning, Sierra posted a carousel, him in a beanie, her in sunlit linen, a caption about sacred masculine energy. I didn't follow her. The algorithm didn't care. His comment was first, flame, prayer hands, lightning bolt. I screenshotted it and put it in context social because I don't gaslight myself anymore. Caleb drifted through the kitchen smelling like bergamot and online attention. "Any thoughts on the kids' schedule this weekend?" he asked, performing cooperation. "Calendar invite went out Tuesday," I said, handing Emma her water bottle. "You accepted." He checked his phone, blinked. "Oh, right. We're at the planetarium Saturday morning," I added. "Tickets at 10. I have a live stream collab at 11, he said. Can you move it?" I asked, not sharp, just even. His mouth opened and closed. "Maybe I can push to 1. "Great," I said. "Then you can take them after the show." He stood there like a man who'd tried a door and found it locked from the inside. I rinsed a pan and let the water run truthfully loud. At work, Hannah leaned on my doorframe, studying my face like it was a spreadsheet. "You're different," she said. "Bad different?" I asked. "The kind that comes after you stop trying to be the weather," she said. "You look like a person with a plan." "I am," I said. "It includes boring food and boundaries." She smiled. "Both age well?" That afternoon, the attorney called back. "Ms. Ellison, I've reviewed your initial notes." Her voice had clean lines. Here's the order of operations. 1. Continue contemporaneous documentation. Keep it factual. 2. Freeze credit and set alerts. 3. Pull 3 years of school correspondence. Who was addressed? Who responded? 4. Confirm deed and mortgage. Whose names? Whose obligations? 5. Don't announce anything yet. Preparation isn't hostility. What about custody? I asked. If the facts match your notes, you're looking at strong odds for primary physical with generous visitation, she said. Courts appreciate consistency in caregivers. You've got a record of being the parent of record. Something in my rib cage loosened, then refortified. Okay, last thing, she added. No reactive texts. If he provokes, respond with logistics or with silence. Judges don't read tone, they read content. I almost said I could make content sing. Instead, I said thank you. Saturday, the planetarium ceiling turned black and then infinite. Ethan squeezed my hand at the first burst of stars. Emma whispered, "They're breathing." And I whispered, "So are we." Afterward, Caleb met us on the steps, sunglasses and apology. He was late, but not catastrophically. He knelt and hugged the twins with enough enthusiasm to count, then looked at me like we were meeting at the border between nations. "Thanks for covering," he said. "They're your kids too," I said. He started to say something else and then didn't. I watched him buckle them into his car with performative competence. He waved as he drove off, a small flourish for the security camera on the corner. I breathed into my scarf until the cold stopped feeling like punishment. Back home, I did a thing I hadn't done in years. I took a nap. When I woke up, the light had gone honey soft and the apartment was an animal at rest. I made soup from what we had. Carrots, onion, garlic, the ends of a rotisserie chicken, the last of the noodles. The twins came home flushed and talkative. Caleb handed me their jackets and a smile that asked me to hand him back his old life. I closed the door and ladled dinner into bowls. Sunday night, he tested the perimeter. He stood in the doorway while I sorted laundry and tried nostalgia. "Remember when we used to set alarms to watch meteor showers on the roof?" "Yes," I said, folding a t-shirt. "We were 25. He waited. "You used to be spontaneous." "I still am," I said. "I just plan it now." He laughed in the small, surprised way people do when they hear their reflection out loud. "You're really doing this, huh?" "You gave me a job title," I said, stacking tiny socks. "I'm very good at jobs." His eyes softened, then sharpened. "Mara, I didn't say I don't love you." "You said I'm not your match," I answered. "Believe yourself." He walked away and I felt that old impulse to follow, fix, smooth. I folded it like laundry and put it in the drawer where we keep things we no longer use. The next 2 weeks organized themselves around the new rules. I answered his texts with calendar links and bullet points. If he sent a paragraph about feelings, I sent a single line about pickup times. He tried compliments, then critiques, then silence, then a playlist labeled us that sounded like a younger, softer decade. I didn't press play. I already knew the melody, "I am unhappy, make me a mirror." He started noticing what I didn't say. He started watching me the way people watch a clock they can't set. He came home earlier twice. He unloaded the dishwasher once and announced it like a press release. The twins smiled more on Mondays. The teacher emailed, "Ethan's focus is improving. Nice work with the bedtime routine." I forwarded the note to the attorney's address labeled case and to my own folder labeled "We're okay." On a drizzly Thursday, I ran into Jonas at the pharmacy while picking up cough drops. He was off shift in a charcoal sweater holding a basket of pragmatic groceries. We recognized each other's tired posture. "How's Emma?" he asked. "Conquered it," I said. "Cough's gone. Appetite returned with a vengeance." He grinned. "Good. That kid and a box of crackers could start a restaurant." I laughed, the kind that warms your sternum on a cold aisle. He glanced at my basket. Tea, lemons, a face mask I'd picked up on impulse. "Mom care," he said, and it didn't sound patronizing. It sounded like acknowledgement. "Take some of that tea yourself." "I will," I said, and meant it. We parted with a wave that didn't ask for more. Back home, the twins sprawled across the living room like they owned a small country. I sat at the table and updated the log for the day. Homework, done. Petty follow-up, resolved. Caleb, confirmed Saturday pickup. I added one more line I'd never written before because I finally recognized its value. Me, ate lunch, lifted weights, drank water, still here. That night when Caleb slid close to me on the couch with a late-breaking tenderness. I didn't flinch, and I didn't lean. I let the space between us be honest. He sighed theatrically. You really don't care, he said, testing. I care about what's in my lane, I said. That includes the kids, my work, my spine, and the things that keep all three upright. He stared at me for a long moment like he was deciphering a language he thought he already knew. You're different, he said again. No, I said, standing to turn off the kitchen light. I'm visible. In bed, the ceiling was just a ceiling. I slept like someone who had written her own job description and meant it. There's a strange peace that settles in when you stop chasing validation. It's not serenity. It's more like clean silence after a siren stops. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for Caleb's approval. I was just functioning, breathing, watching my life move without his script, and that apparently terrified him. By the second month of our co-parenting phase, Caleb started testing the temperature of my silence. He'd linger near me during breakfast, make small jokes, try to slip his hand around my waist like muscle memory could erase intent. I didn't pull away. I just didn't respond. You can't fight wind if it stops blowing. The twins, of course, noticed before he did. Mom, Emma whispered one night as I tucked her in. Are you and Dad mad? I smoothed her hair. Why do you ask? Because you talk like teachers now, she said, all calm and serious. Kids are so honest, it's surgical. I kissed her forehead. Sometimes being calm is how grown-ups stop hurting each other. She nodded, half understanding. Okay, but you still love him, right? I paused. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because the truth deserved clean air. I'll always want what's best for him, I said softly. That's love enough. The next week, Caleb launched what I call the charm recovery phase. It began with small gestures. Coffee made before I woke up. Playlists sent for the vibe. Photos of the twins captioned, "We're lucky, huh?" If I answered at all, it was with a heart emoji, not affection, documentation. Then came nostalgia. Remember our first apartment? He said one night, leaning in the kitchen doorway. That tiny place with the bad plumbing and the good light? I remember fixing the sink at midnight while you wrote blog drafts about enlightenment. I said, not cruelly, just factually. He blinked. That's not how I remember it. I know, I said. That's why it lasted as long as it did. Around that time, Sierra Vale, his ex-turned self-proclaimed relationship coach, started showing up on my radar again. Her podcast was suddenly full of recycled wisdom about authentic masculinity and unconditional feminine patience. Caleb shared her posts, commented, even tagged me in one, learning to balance partnership and purpose, proud of the journey. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. Screenshots are lighter than memories but heavier in court. I wasn't trying to punish him. I was documenting what emotional neglect looks like when it wears a spiritual hoodie. The following Friday, Ethan had a class showcase. A simple event. Cardboard volcanoes, glued planets, kids shouting facts about lava. I arrived early. Snacks in hand, camera charged. Caleb arrived late, phone in hand, self-excused. The teacher, Ms. Alvarez, waved me over. Hi, Mara. You're always so prepared, she said warmly. You're our rock parent. Her phrasing landed sharper than intended. I smiled. Thank you. I'm trying. She laughed. We can tell. Caleb caught the tail end of that. His jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't look at him. That the kids are lucky. He said nothing. But I could feel it. The shift. The tiny panic of a man realizing he's no longer the main character in the story he wrote about himself. That weekend, he doubled down. He cooked dinner. He danced with the kids in the living room. He even asked about my day, and I'll admit, for one fleeting second I almost softened. Almost. Until he said, "It feels good to be aligned again, doesn't it?" I stared at him, fork suspended. Aligned? You know, we're back to being partners, balanced, supportive. I let the silence stretch long enough to make him uncomfortable. "Caleb," I said finally, "you don't get to redefine balance because you miss being the center." His smile cracked. "Why do you always make it sound like I'm the villain?" "I don't," I said. "You just don't like reading the story from someone else's point of view." The next few weeks turned into emotional chess. He'd send long, introspective texts at midnight, paragraphs about rediscovering gratitude, rediscovering us. I'd respond with, "Ethan's dentist at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Can you take him?" He began inserting "we" into sentences again. "We should start meal prepping. We could take the kids hiking. We might need a couples retreat." I countered with logistics. "The grocery list's on the counter. The twins' soccer starts next week. You'll need to book your own retreat." Every act of detachment became a mirror he didn't want to face. One night he stood in the doorway while I finished a spreadsheet. "You're colder now," he said. "Harder." I looked up. "No, Caleb, I'm just room temperature. You were used to me feverish." He stared like I'd hit him, but I hadn't raised my voice. I didn't need to. Truth carries fine on a whisper. Then came the Sierra phase 2, a new post on her feed. A man's hand holding hers over a cup of herbal tea captioned, "Healing means letting go of the people who no longer vibrate with your frequency." His wedding ring finger was bare but recognizable. That night, Caleb came home late. Again. The twins were asleep, the dishes done. He dropped his keys. "You saw the post?" I didn't flinch. It showed up. "It's not what it looks like. It looks like a public performance," I said. "You've always liked an audience." His voice sharpened. "You think I'm cheating?" "I think you're rehearsing an exit." He froze, guilt flickering just enough to confirm the thing he wanted to deny. "Wow," he said, stepping back. "You're cold. You've really built walls." "Good ones," I said. "They have doors, but not revolving ones." He stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish trying to redefine air. Then he left, slamming the door because sound is the last refuge of people losing control. After he was gone, I sat on the couch, heart oddly steady. For once, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like proof that peace is what remains when manipulation leaves the room. I poured a glass of water, logged the date and time in my planner. 9:37 p.m. Caleb left after confrontation. No raised voices from me. No physical contact. Kids asleep, calm maintained. Paper doesn't lie. Paper is witness. 3 days later, a text arrived. "We need to talk." I think we both lost sight of what really matters. I stared at it, thumb hovering, then I replied, "Agreed. Please email your availability for mediation." Because I was done talking in circles. It was time to draw lines. The following Monday began like any other. School drop-off, coffee gone cold on the counter. Inbox full of people needing me for everything except what mattered. But inside I was on a countdown. Not toward an ending, but a definition. By noon, I had an appointment with my lawyer, Nadia Clark. She was everything I needed, calm, deliberate, not impressed by theatrics. She had eyes that could slice through charm like a scalpel. We met in her office, where the bookshelves were lined with case files instead of trophies. She gestured for me to sit. "How are things holding up?" "Predictably unstable," I said. "Good," she replied like I'd given the right answer. "That means you're noticing patterns instead of reacting to them." I handed her a thick binder. Copies of my logs, school emails, pediatric forms, joint expenses, and yes, screenshots of social media posts. I'd labeled each section by date. "This is what I have so far." Nadia flipped through it, nodding with clinical approval. "You'd be surprised how few clients understand the value of documentation until it's too late. This is solid, Mara. You're thinking like someone who plans to win, not just survive." "I don't want to destroy him," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. "I just want peace, consistency for the kids." She met my eyes. Peace requires leverage. You're building it. That night, Caleb came home earlier than usual. He'd shaved, dressed decently, and smelled like the cologne he used to wear on our second anniversary. The one that said, "Remember who I was?" He tried a smile. "I got takeout from that Thai place you like." I looked up from the dining table where I was reviewing expense reports. "I like a lot of Thai places." "Okay," he said lightly. "The one you used to love. Back when we—" "Caleb," I interrupted gently. "What do you need?" He blinked. "I just thought we could talk. About us. About everything." I nodded slowly. "All right, talk." He sat down across from me, clasping his hands like a penitent man rehearsing sincerity. "I've been thinking about what I said that night, about calling you just a co-parent." "Mm-hmm. It was cruel," he said, leaning forward. "I didn't mean it like that. I was frustrated. I felt unseen. And when I feel trapped, I say things to push people away before they can leave me first." It was a good speech. If I didn't know him, I might have believed it. I folded my hands. "And Sierra?" His throat twitched. "That's not... She's helping me work through some things. It's not what you think." "I think you like being admired," I said. "She gives you that. I stopped doing it because I mistook you for someone who didn't need worship to feel real." He winced, but recovered quickly. "You're angry." "I'm informed," I corrected. He looked at me for a long time like he was waiting for the moment I'd crack, cry, yell. Something he could call emotional instability later. I didn't give it to him. Finally, he said, "You're different. You've got this wall around you." "It's called boundaries," I said. "They're load-bearing." He leaned back, studying me. "You really think you can raise them alone?" I felt it. The subtle turn from guilt to threat. His favorite move. "I already have been," I said evenly. "You just didn't notice." His jaw flexed. "You'd really drag the kids through a custody battle?" I closed my laptop and met his gaze. "You mean would I protect them from instability?" "Yes." He laughed then, short and bitter. "You're really going through with this?" "I am," I said. "You gave me the job title, remember? Co-parent. I'm just formalizing the role." He stood up abruptly. "You'll regret this, Mara." "Maybe," I said, calm as glass. "But regret won't change the paperwork I've already filed." His face paled. "What paperwork?" "The kind that starts a process," I said simply. "Nothing you can't prepare for." He stared at me like I'd pulled a lever he didn't know existed. Then he left. I waited for the sound of the front door to close before I exhaled. The apartment felt weightless, not peaceful yet, but lighter, like an attic cleared of boxes. A few days later, the first legal document arrived. Petition for divorce and proposed custody agreement. I'd been meticulous, alternating weekends, shared holidays, decision-making split by domain. He could handle recreational stuff. I'd retain educational and medical authority. It wasn't cruel, it was accurate. When he received it, he texted a single line. "This is war, then?" I replied, "No, this is structure." Weeks blurred into preparation. Caleb's posts turned performative. Videos about men reclaiming agency. Vague captions about betrayal and an oddly timed series titled, "When Strength is Misread as Distance." Sierra liked every post. Sometimes she commented, "Proud of your growth." It would have been almost funny if it weren't so predictable. At the twins' next parent-teacher meeting, he arrived late again. Ms. Alvarez gave me a sympathetic smile. "We can start without him." When he finally walked in, he looked disheveled and distracted. "Sorry, traffic was brutal." "No worries," I said, flipping open my notes. "I've already summarized the main points for you." He shot me a look that could have cut glass. I smiled politely. When the meeting ended, Ms. Alvarez said quietly, "You're really holding it together." "I have good notes," I said, and I did. Every date, every instance, every missed pickup neatly categorized and time-stamped. The truth, organized. That night, Caleb called. His voice was low, uncertain. "You really don't want to fix this?" "I did," I said, "for 10 years. And now, I want clarity." "You think clarity's love?" "No," I said, "I think it's the absence of gaslighting." He sighed. "You sound like one of your spreadsheets." "Maybe that's why they never lie to me," I said and hung up. A week later, I received an email from his lawyer. Formal acknowledgement of service, with a counter-proposal for custody. He wanted equal time. Nadia reviewed it, lips twitching. He's aiming high without data. Judges care about consistency, not slogans. We'll keep your documentation front and center. Should I respond? No, she said. Let the facts speak. I almost smiled. Facts had been my second language since childhood. 2 nights later, I walked past the twins' room. Ethan was whispering to Emma, "Mom's brave." Emma replied sleepily, "Dad's trying." Both were true in their way, but only one of us had stopped pretending. By the 3rd month, Caleb's tone changed from defensive to desperate. He wasn't angry anymore. He was uncertain. And for a man like him, uncertainty was the deepest cut. He'd built his entire identity on confidence. The man who could charm a room, sell a dream, turn chaos into control. But now, the one person who used to steady him was no longer impressed. And I think that scared him more than losing me. It started small. Random texts in the middle of the night. "Can we start over? I've been reading about attachment theory. I think I get it now. Do you still remember our first dance?" I read every one of them, screenshot each, then archived. I didn't answer. By week 2, he was showing up more. Dropping by early to pick up something he forgot. Staying longer when dropping off the twins. Offering to fix things around the apartment that didn't need fixing. He was circling, trying to turn access into relevance. One afternoon, while the twins played outside, he leaned against the counter, watching me pour tea. "You know," he said softly, "I miss this." "This?" "Just the small stuff. Us in the kitchen, the quiet." I set the mug down carefully. "You miss being comfortable, Caleb. That's not the same thing." He smiled faintly, like I'd just proven his point. "You're colder than I remember." "I'm the same temperature," I said. "You just stopped mistaking comfort for love." That night, I found a draft in our shared cloud folder. His byline, his words. Title, "When the woman you love turns into a stranger." Subtitle, "How detachment became the new form of punishment." I didn't open it all the way. I just read the first paragraph. "She used to need me. Now she doesn't even look up." I thought independence was sexy, but not when it's pointed at me. It wasn't an apology. It was performance. He was already repackaging our pain as content. I closed the laptop, logged it under manipulation attempts, public projection. 3 days later, he asked if I'd join him for dinner. "For closure," he said. I didn't want to go, but Nadia said something that stuck. Sometimes the most valuable evidence isn't what they hide. It's what they say when they think they're winning you back. So I went. The restaurant was one we used to frequent before the kids were born. Quiet, low light, old jazz humming through expensive speakers. He was already there, 2 glasses of wine on the table. His smile was rehearsed. "Mara," he said, standing up slightly, "you look like someone who doesn't need an adjective." I interrupted, sitting down. He exhaled through a grin, still sharp. We made small talk. Weather, the twins, work. Then the inevitable pivot. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "Therapy, reflection. I've realized I pushed you away because I didn't feel seen. I wanted to be needed, and when you didn't, I mistook that for rejection." "That's not reflection," I said quietly. "That's rationalization." He frowned. "Why do you always have to turn everything into an analysis?" "Because you always turn everything into a performance." His jaw tightened. "I came here to make peace, Mara. Peace requires honesty," I said. "Do you even know what you want from me right now?" He leaned forward. "I want us back. Not the way it was. Better. I can do the work." "You had a decade to do the work," I said. "You just thought I'd never leave." He reached across the table, fingertips brushing mine. For a second I froze, not because I wanted him, but because I realized something. He still thought affection was currency. "Caleb," I said softly, pulling my hand away, "you're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you lost access." The words hit him like glass cracking. He blinked, his voice barely steady. "You've changed." "Yes," I said, standing. That was the point. And I left. The next day he posted a vague update. "Some people change so much you don't recognize their soul anymore." Sierra commented a heart emoji. His followers flooded the thread with sympathy. I didn't respond, But that night, I received a message from an unfamiliar account. You don't know me, but I used to work with Sierra. You should probably see this. Attached was a screenshot. A private chat between Sierra and Caleb, time-stamped 2 weeks before our separation. Her message: if she won't evolve with you, maybe you need someone who already gets it. His reply: maybe I already found her. The air left my lungs slowly, not from pain, from confirmation. The truth wasn't shocking. It was expected, and that made it sadder somehow. I saved the screenshot in my legal folder, printed 2 copies, labeled both infidelity evidence Exhibit 1. That weekend, he showed up again, all apology and regret. I made mistakes, he said, voice trembling just enough to sound human. I was confused. Sierra's nothing. It was just attention. It didn't mean anything. I believed that part. It didn't mean anything. Not to him, not to her. They were just 2 people using each other's validation as oxygen. What do you want me to say, Caleb? I asked quietly. That it's okay? That I forgive you? He nodded faintly. Something. I don't speak that language anymore, I said. He stared at me, eyes glassy. You really mean this, don't you? I do. He nodded slowly, tears falling he didn't bother to wipe away. I don't know who I am without you, he said. That's exactly why this has to end, I replied. He didn't argue, didn't yell, just turned, walked out, and this time didn't slam the door. Later that night, I found the twins asleep on the couch, a half-finished Lego castle between them. I sat on the floor watching their soft breathing, realizing something simple and devastating. All this time I'd been mourning the version of him I thought could grow. But growth isn't real if it only happens when you're losing control. I opened my planner, added 1 more line, April 17th, finalized decision, no reconciliation, focus, stability, peace, future. Then I signed my initials beside it, not as a wife, as a witness to my own boundary. By May, the apartment felt like it had learned my rhythm again. Quiet mornings, laughter in the evenings, no tiptoeing around moods that shifted like weather. The twins stopped asking when Dad was coming back. They still saw him every other weekend, but now it was routine, not rupture. And me? I'd stopped confusing stability for loneliness. One Monday, I got an email from Nadia, subject line, settlement update. Her message was short, efficient. His attorney just sent over revised terms. Custody remains in your favor. He's agreed to forfeit joint decision rights in exchange for reducing financial obligations. He wants to keep his public image clean. I reread it twice, then once more slower. He wanted control over his reputation, not his children. That was all the confirmation I needed about what truly mattered to him. I replied, accept, file immediately. That evening, when I picked up the twins from his apartment, he tried to start small talk. Emma told me you're writing again, he said, keeping his tone casual. Here and there, I said. What's it about this time? Truth, I said, the kind that doesn't need editing. He winced. Is this about me? I smiled faintly. Everything I write is about survival. You were just 1 chapter. He opened his mouth to say something else, but Emma ran up, clutching her drawing of a mountain with 2 paths leading upward. Mom, I made this at Dad's. That's beautiful, I said, kneeling to her level. Which path is yours? She pointed to the one with a small sun above it. This one. It's steeper, but it goes higher. I kissed her forehead. Good choice. When I stood, Caleb's eyes were wet. You really don't hate me, do you? No, I said softly. I just stopped needing you to be who I wanted. Weeks passed quietly after that. The divorce papers came through without objection. No hearings, no shouting, no drama, just signatures and silence. The same way he'd broken me years ago, now undone by the same stillness. The day the final decree arrived, I went for a walk alone. The sky was pale gold, the air humid with the smell of rain. Every step felt like turning a page. When I came back home, Ethan was in the living room building towers out of Jenga blocks. Mom, he said, not looking up, do you feel different now that it's all done? I thought for a second. Lighter. Not happier yet, but lighter. He nodded as if he understood perfectly. Like when you stop carrying a backpack after a field trip. Exactly that. That weekend, I stopped by Nadia's office to sign the last of the post-settlement paperwork. She slid the folder toward me. "You handled this better than most people I've ever seen." "I had practice," I said. "Years of managing emotions that weren't mine." She chuckled. "You'd make a good attorney." "I'll settle for a woman who sleeps well," I said. 2 months later, the blog post went viral. Not Caleb's, mine. Title: "The Quiet Divorce, How I Stopped Performing and Started Living." It wasn't vindictive. It wasn't even angry. It was honest, about what it means to lose yourself to someone else's narrative and what it costs to reclaim the pen. People shared it across forums, blogs, even podcasts. Messages flooded in from women and men alike. People who'd been told they were too cold, too distant, too much, when all they'd been was done. A few weeks later, I saw Caleb at the twins' school art fair. He looked smaller, not in stature but in presence, like a man who'd run out of performance. He walked up, holding a paper cup of lemonade. "I read your piece." "Oh," he nodded. "You didn't mention me by name." "I didn't have to," I said. "It wasn't about you." His eyes flickered with something. Sadness? Relief? Maybe both. He exhaled. "You're doing well." "I am. I'm glad." I smiled, gently, not cruelly. "Me too." Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I stood on the balcony with a mug of tea and looked up at the sky. It was clear enough to see Orion, the same constellation we'd watched once from that rooftop apartment, when everything still felt new. But the stars didn't make me nostalgic. They made me grateful, because I realized something simple. Peace doesn't arrive when you forgive someone. It arrives when you stop waiting for an apology. I went inside, opened my planner to the very first page, the one where I'd written months ago. "Logistics are love in a house like this." And underneath, in smaller handwriting, I added a new line. "Love is also boundaries kept consistently over time." Then I closed it. For good. Epilogue. 1 year later, the twins were thriving. Ethan joined a robotics club. Emma started painting, selling small canvases online for pocket money. And me? I launched a podcast. The Quiet Rebuild. Each episode, I read stories from people who rebuilt their lives after being diminished by someone else's version of love. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. Truth has its own gravity. It finds the ears it needs. Sometimes I still get messages from Caleb. Short ones. Mostly updates about the kids. Always polite. Always careful. He signs off every time with, "Thanks, Mara." And I respond, "You're welcome, Caleb." That's all. Because closure isn't a door slam. It's a door left gently ajar with no one standing on the other side anymore. And that's how I knew the story was finally over. Not because I won, but because I didn't need to keep telling it.